Hello everyone and welcome back to the YouTube audiobook series for The Forbidden Truth, written by Abby Matthias. I am Abby Davis and today I will be introducing Chapter 9. If you missed Chapter 8, link is in the description below along with the playlist. And if you are all caught up and ready to go, we will continue with Chapter 9, A Day of Duplicity.
As Abby continued to drive, I started to explain why I wasn't present for most of the day, starting from the beginning. I was still kind of selective on what exactly I told her, because I didn't want her freaking out while behind the wheel, and I didn't really think every part of my day was important. But, starting with this morning, it really started out like normal. She was overstressing herself over this family Thanksgiving, and I was right next to her, calming her nerves. Eventually, she wanted to take a shower before she left, so I decided that it would be a good time to practice with my wings while I waited for her. I did my steady warm-ups first, such as activating the wings to come out of my back and moving them in any direction I could. I have read in my wings anatomy book that stretching the wings before taking flight was always a wise choice for beginners. That way, the user could physically feel the makeup of their wings and understand the sensations as they maneuvered them. But that's just a side note. Getting back to the original subject, I did all the suggested stretches and exercises that would hopefully benefit so I didn't have a horrific accident. So, once I felt prepared enough, I began to flap the wings to slowly lift myself off the ground. Everything went smooth as my body lifted into the air. My eyes kept an eye on my surroundings as the leafless maple tree branches swayed violently from the breeze accumulating from my wings. The wilted leaves tumbled across the dead grass as the rush of wind blew them away effortlessly. It wouldn't be long until the snow came to the earth, so I knew I had to take advantage of the weather before the bitter cold filled the air. Besides the point, with only having these wings for a few weeks, I believed I was getting the hang of them. Not that I was anywhere near being an expert. There was still plenty of things I needed to learn about them and gain the experience in order to fully control them. But yet the only way to reach that level of management over them, you had to fail and practice. And with that being said, that was the way my path went that very afternoon. I eventually gained the courage to fly myself above the house and move about to practice turning and changing directions. This form of training for myself also involved vertical direction changes along with horizontal switches. Flipping the orientation from left to right was pretty much solid for me. It was changed from up to down where I had my issues, or vice versa. That was what I was practicing in particular before the day started going a little south for me. I was able to shoot into the sky and touch the clouds with my bare hands. While I was up there, I managed to flip myself physically to point myself downward towards the ground. As I started shooting down like a meteor, I was timing myself to see how long it took me to get to the ground. Yet, as that grass came to me abruptly, I tried to turn myself away and failed to do so. But instead of scraping into the hard lawn, my body phased through it and started falling through the earth. I panicked for a brief moment, trying to comprehend what was going on. However, eventually I saw the familiar orange and yellow sky filled with black and gray clouds, symbolizing I was in hell. I quickly turned myself over so that my stomach was facing the ground again, and I was able to stop my free-falling before I hit the red-crimson ground. After a moment of taking a few deep breaths in midair, I lowered myself to the ground again to fully calm down. While I was still confused about what all just happened, I looked around at the environment to see exactly where I was within the fiery realm of hell. Ironically enough, I was just outside my house, and I couldn't be happier. I recognized its wooden planks that formed the shelter while it sat only a couple miles away from the dead hell border. My body grew relieved as it recalled its familiar environment. I could have landed in a worse spot that was open to the public like Devilish Square. My wings would definitely bring attention to myself, and I already had enough publicity with the Snake and Rose brand itself. I most certainly didn't need any more of it, especially if it meant the possibility of Satan finding out about my hidden abilities. I didn't want to be down here for long anyhow. Regardless on how I did it, I needed to get back to Abby before she went to that Thanksgiving party.
Darius, Satan has requested...
I heard a raspy voice say, but pause. I quickly turned my head to the right to see that orange-skinned servant that Satan sent to fetch me a couple months back. His eyes were extremely wide as he took in my presence, and my breath hitched in alarm. He had been the first demon to take in the sight of my wings, and I didn't feel happy about it. A servant of the Dark Lord saw a drastic change in my physical form. There was no way he wasn't going to tell his master, and that would mean disaster would storm my way. Not only that, but that hurricane of chaos would hit Abby without warning and destroy her life. It was one thing for this circumstance to affect me. It was another to affect my protector child, an innocent soul that has done but try to live her life in generosity and compassion. I couldn't allow him to say anything about it. After only a few seconds of grasping my changes, the servant's facial expression shifted into a devilish look. His eyes and eyebrows relaxed while his mouth shifted into a crooked smile. The slight tilt of his head downward also helped to create this evil illusion, and I knew exactly what was going through his head. However, before I could raise my voice, the servant rapidly turned and started running back to Devilish Square. His attempt was to rush back to Satan to take in his observations, but I wasn't going to allow him to. So for the first time ever, I physically acted out towards another being using violence. I advanced myself, running as fast as I could in his direction. I slowly caught up to him as my breathing picked up from the exercise. Although, with time, I may have been able to seize him naturally, I purposely launched myself towards the servant using my wings, and in no time, I grabbed his arm to lift him off the ground. As the poor demon screamed his head off, I turned us around to aim us back to my house. I wanted to be as far away from the city as possible to avoid more visitors or witnesses. So upon approaching my living quarters, I hovered us in mid-air to interact with the servant. "Going so soon?" I teased. "You've only been here for a minute. What's your hurry?" The man squirmed within my grasp for a moment, staring at the ground. However, after taking in the distance from him to the crimson ground, he glared up at me and spoke.
Don't badger me, you insubordinate prick! You know exactly what I am required to do by law!
Oh, now it's the law to report my changes to Satan. Well, let's agree to disagree.
I am under oath, Darius, to serve our king as he sees fit, and to honor his requests.
He is not my king, and is cruel to everyone. You will not say anything about these wings to anyone, especially to your master. I don't care what he has told you about me, or what he has ordered you to do. You will keep your mouth shut. Do I make myself clear?
Fuck you! You can take your order and shove it up your ass! I only answer to Satan!
After that statement, I grew furious at the man and knew I had to try harder to strike fear into him. Yet I didn't want to cause extreme injury to him. So I did the next best thing, with only causing minor damage without sending him to the hospital. I flew us higher into the air until we reached about 50 meters and dangled his poor little body in the air some more. As we hovered in place a little more, I allowed him to take one last look at me. As his eyes met mine, I finally saw the fear growing within his eyes while he was stumbling over his words. However, I didn't feel an ounce of remorse. So as it was my turn to look dastardly at this demon, I slowly let his arm slip through my fingers to make him fall to the ground. As he broke through the air, I heard his scream grow farther and farther away from me. It was almost as if he was in dead hell, where the rest of the damned souls were. But after about 30 seconds, I heard the loud thud of his body hit the ground, and I knew it was time for me to land myself. So as my wings gently guided me to the ground, the orange-skinned servant laid on his back trying to breathe. As I was still unfazed by his agony somehow, I walked over to his body and placed my foot on top of his chest to ensure he wouldn't move to stand. Along with this action, I was prolonging his suffering a little longer to strike the final wave of fear into his body before he was allowed to do anything else. So as I wanted to speak a final time, I leaned myself in while putting my weight onto my foot that was upon his chest. He squirmed and grunted in pain, but didn't say anything. He just stared at my face as I was heated with fury. Let's try this again. You are not going to tell Satan about my newfound abilities. In fact, you're not going to tell him about this interaction that we just had. If you do, it will affect more people than just me. People who I care about. And I don't intend for that to happen. If that does, I will hunt you down and kill you for what you have done. I will cause you and your family the same strife that you put me through by being a worthless snitch. So to prevent that fate, you will stand and tell me what Satan wants from me. From this point on, you will not say a word more about what you've seen or heard here. Do you understand me? I said with a husky voice. Once I redirected him, he willingly nodded his head to me with watery eyes. So once I felt he understood enough, I lifted my foot off of him and extended my arm out to him for support. I was still generous enough to help him off the ground. He was very hesitant to take my hand, which was a good sign that he was going to heed my warning. Eventually, he placed his trembling hand upon mine and grasped it to pull him up aggressively. The servant lost his footing for a moment, but situated himself quickly to look proper and presentable as he was before.
Darius, Satan has requested your presence within his office.
Well, of course he does. I guess you'll have to show me to him, I replied, pretending to start over. After my response, he nodded his head quickly and turned himself to start walking to the palace. With my panic and worries finally put to sleep, I fixed my attire as well and followed behind the servant. During this time, I was trying to calm my breathing when I heard Abby shouting in my head.
Darius, where are you? Come on, I need to go.
That was the exact moment when I realized I screwed up. If I was stuck down here about to endure more of Satan's wrath, I wasn't going to be able to be by her side for the Thanksgiving meetup. At least for right now. But that was sadly the outcome that had to happen. Hey, sorry I'm not up there. I am currently caught up in something. You can go to the Thanksgiving party without me, I replied within my head.
What do you mean you're caught up with something? Is Satan being a dick again?
No, I'm not with him. Well, at least not yet. I knew I couldn't tell Abby the whole situation. She would be unfocused and worried the entire time I was gone. So I told her half-truth that led me down this path. I am just having a serious power malfunction. It's why I went to hell. I just don't want to distract you with what's going on with me. You're already nervous. I promise you will be fine. Have fun, and I will be by you as soon as I can.
Oh, well, okay. I hope your power stops acting up soon. I'll try.
With that reply, I refocused myself and began to clear my head before standing in front of Satan. Now, for this next part, I didn't tell Abby about any of it. The main reason is that I still thought it was nonsense and I have extreme mixed emotions about it. However, the servant and I made our way back to the city and swerved through the busy streets. I kept my eyes on him as to not lose him within the crowd and follow the same course that he did. Yet as I walked, I suddenly had something pull my right arm and made me lose my balance. I stumbled off my path and ended up falling to the ground within a dark alleyway. I grunted for a brief moment as I lost my breath, yet I quickly regained my focus to stand and approach whatever had pulled me into here. "Just what the hell do you think you're—" And I paused mid-sentence to find a familiar face standing before me.
Shh. Before you say anything, you need to watch this.
It was the old man that I encountered a couple months ago. How in the world did he pull me into the alleyway? Shouldn't he be feeble and weak to pull my huge mass of a body? But more importantly, why did he want to encounter me again? Despite my confusion, the old man excitedly watched just outside the alleyway as if it was a television. So upon feeling somewhat defeated, I crossed my arms to see what he was talking about. Upon the sight, I saw the exit of the alley as the old man surrounded us in his camouflaged barrier. The citizens were oblivious to the narrowish side path and moved along with their days. However, after a brief moment, I saw that orange-skinned servant looking frantic.
Darius, you can't hide from Satan! You know how he gets when he waits for too long! Darius!
He cried. However, everyone gawked at the man with confusion and disgust. Eventually, he moved out of sight and the old man was laughing his head off.
That never gets old,
he said, turning back to me.
The slaves of the evil one are pretty stupid. That's why you always make sure your target is in sight at all times.
As he peered up at me, I knew my face bore a serious expression. I wasn't enthused about this encounter or the fact he was making that man panic because of my disappearance. So instead of indulging with him, I started to scowl. Why the hell did you yank me into the alleyway again? I have no interest in talking to you about your nonsense. The elder didn't appreciate my tone or statement. His facial expression changed as if he was offended, but he still spoke calmly.
I wanted to see your progress, Chosen One.
Don't give me that crap again, I said, pointing my finger to him. I am not the Chosen One. Quit calling me that.
Why should I? You can't change your destiny. You are the Chosen One whether you like it or not.
Upon his remark, I started to get angry. Who was he to tell me who I was or who I was supposed to become? I was already defiant towards the bastard that had control over everything. There was no way I was going to let someone else demand me to become someone I'm not, especially from an old man I didn't know. So before anything else could aggravate me, I started to walk away from him to exit the alley again. Yet before I could reach it, the elderly man spoke out again.
I guess you don't want to protect your beloved Abby from Satan's asperity.
My body stopped dead in its tracks upon the mentioning of her name. How did he know that? But most importantly, why would he bring her up? Don't you dare bring her up, I exclaimed, turning myself back to him. I don't know how you know about her, but she will be fine in my care.
Yeah, just like when Satan tortured her to get answers out of you.
Now at this point, I was growing furious at his words. I tried to help her, but I was stuck within Satan's grasp. Also upon his statement, my confusion spiked even further. How would he know any of that? Did he have some sort of connection with Satan? What was the extent of his power? Was he watching me? Despite my questions, I spoke with frustration and fury. You don't know how hard I try to protect her. Quit speaking of things you don't fully understand. The old man displayed a smirk as my anger was showing itself. Instead of him growing fearful, he grew confident and kept fueling my aggressive fire.
I understand more than you think. Tell me, do you truly think she cares about you?
It's none of your business what she thinks of me, or vice versa, I stated, beaming my eyes at him.
She'll never see you as a human. You will forever be a demon that destroys her life.
Listen here, asshole, I said, advancing myself in front of him. I am not destroying her life. I am doing the best I can to keep her safe and protect her from every threat she has, especially when it comes to the bastard of a ruler. You have no right to criticize me and tell me I'm not doing my job right.
Oh, that's right. I'm just an old man after all. Only Satan can do that to you. I'm sorry for disgracing the satanic royal dog,
he said sarcastically. Shut up! I shouted, finally having enough. However, before I could lay a finger on him, my wings protruded out of my back and malfunctioned. The enormous wings ended up shooting me backwards from where I was standing and slammed me into the wall. I was obviously stunned by it and was suddenly out of breath from the impact. Yet I still felt like something was off still. Trying to find out why I kept feeling this way, I looked down at myself and saw something new. All 4 of my most strenuous powers activated at once. My wings, the muscle growth, the fire, and my other set of arms. My shirt and pants were ripped as I stood in shock. I'd never had all of the powers act up at once before. So why were they doing it now? Despite my concern, I was brought back to reality as the old man unshielded himself from a force field and cleared his throat.
Now there's the chosen one that will save us all.
As we both paused to stare at each other, I chose to disregard his statement. Regardless of these changes, I couldn't even save myself from the powers above me. I couldn't even save Abby from Satan's behavior. There wasn't any possibility of saving a whole civilization of misled demons and succubuses. But most importantly, I refocused myself to gather up my torn clothes from the ground. I wanted to semi-cover myself up again so I wasn't exposed. Yet before I could do anything about it, the old man spoke again.
I'm sorry about making you frustrated and aggressive. I just wanted to see how your progress was doing. But please, allow me to mend your clothes.
Upon his apology, he stuck out his hand to offer his help. My mind, of course, was extremely hesitant while my hands were still burning with fire. However, the sincere shift of his voice told me that his atonement was genuine. I took a deep breath to calm my body from my aggression and stress. I knew that was the only way I was going to resort back to normal. So after a brief moment, my fire dissipated, my second pair of arms and wings retracted into my body, and all my muscles resorted back into their normal sizes. Once I knew I was calm, I gave the clothes to the old man. He thanked me with a nod and held each piece of clothing within his hands. He examined them for a little bit before a golden energy surrounded them. With only a few seconds passing, the different torn pieces of clothing mended to their original spots and came together as a whole again seamlessly. While still within the energy, a golden wave skimmed along the surface to, I assume, finish the mending process. Once that was finished, the golden power went away and my clothes were fixed. Without saying a word, the old man extended his arms to me, holding out my shirt and pants. I took them, trying to hide my gratefulness to have them back again, while I immediately placed them upon my body again. Yet, he informed me on what he did to ensure my understanding was the same as his.
Your designated clothes are back to normal, but I did add some magic that will make the clothing adjust to your body's size and structure, so no more ripping of your clothing. As for your arms, Sleeves will form and extend out just like your original sleeves do. When your wings come through, your shirt will make way and surround the bases of them. Your clothes will never rip again because of your changes.
As I fastened the last button on my shirt, I gazed at the man with confusion and perplexity. Why are you helping me?
Because I can. It's the least I can do to help you on your journey. Are you not grateful for my assistance?
I mean, yes, I am. But I don't understand why you still have this obsession with me. I'm telling you, I am not the chosen one you think of. You are mistaking me for someone else.
How can you still be denying your fate with what you have been gifted?
Because these gifts were bestowed upon me when I became a protector demon. I started out with no powers. I'm constantly evolving until I have fully served as a protector demon for a year. Just before the man could speak again, I felt a beating pain within my chest. It agonized my body to the point where I needed to lean on the back wall for support. I didn't know what was happening, at least not until I placed my hand upon the area and realized my heart was beating again somehow. My mind couldn't fathom why this happens, and I wasn't sure why it acted up. I knew it involved my firepower, but as to what purpose it served, it was unclear.
What are you feeling, Darius?
The old man asked with curiosity in his voice. I stuttered for a moment, yet was able to give a response. I think it's a heartbeat.
But demons don't have hearts. We both are fully aware of that.
I know, but then what else could it be? This beating within my chest is in the same spot as where a heart is located, and it keeps a rhythm like one. The only thing is that the beating only happens with my firepower.
If you are certain of this discovery, I will believe you. It's intriguing to say the least, but it must be a way for your fire to recharge. That way, it is at your disposal at all times.
Once he stated that, the beating stopped and the pain subsided. Everything went quiet for a moment as I was grabbing a hold of myself. I knew there was something bigger happening to me. But could it really be this prophecy my dreams were showing me? Or was the old man truly getting to me and filling my head with absurd ideas that made me worry? So upon my confusion, I began confronting the old man once more. I know that these powers I have gained are not normal. Satan has made that abundantly clear with his attitude and actions. So instead of talking like a crazy old man, how about you tell me more about this prophecy that you claim I will fulfill? His smile withered away for a minute as he felt insulted. However, he eventually brushed it away and started talking again.
Besides what I have already stated within our first interaction, you have more qualities about yourself that make you the promised savior of this world. These are dark and desperate times for the citizens of Hell. Nothing but chaos is lingering and there is no hope for the people. Not with current Satan around. He has brought nothing but pain and suffering to his kingdom. Yet that will change soon enough.
Again, you defer yourself from my original question. Tell me what makes you think I am the chosen one. I asked again with more anger within my tone.
Your height, your brand mark, your powers, and not to mention your skin tone that I got a glimpse of about an hour ago.
At that moment, I shivered rethinking about that instance. I still don't like that fact, but there was nothing I could do about it now. Despite my physical differences from others, those reasons were not good enough for me. Those are only physical attributes about myself. Everyone is different. Those are not good enough reasons. Tell me more specifically about the prophecy." He sighed and shook his head a bit after my reply. I couldn't tell if he was disappointed or irritated at my reactions, yet I couldn't ask about it.
"The Chosen One's powers will flourish and stand out, except he will be recognized like a needle in a haystack. It is someone who we all least expect. An authentic demon that has lived in misfortune."
Upon his statement, I had to snicker. I only had to hear one line that made me instantly relieved. The term needle in a haystack was symbolism for finding something that was nearly impossible to spot among other things. A good example of this explanation is like trying to find a lost child at a fair. The Chosen One was supposed to be hidden from the demon world and appear as a regular member of society. I, for one, stuck out like a sore thumb. All of my attributes and characteristics flagged me as an outcast. There was no hiding for me. Even though that was already making me chuckle, my body couldn't help but laugh out loud when my mind wrapped around the second statement. There were a lot of authentic demons living within this terrible realm. Plus, I was far from being an authentic demon. The only way a demon or succubus could fit into that category was if they were born in hell. They were natural-born beings who have never once lived in the mortal realm. The only world they knew of was this one, where darkness and fire surrounded them. As for me, we already know my story, and are fully aware that I was a human before this. This old man was making a fool of himself, so I wanted to make sure he knew that. "You just proved yourself wrong," I said, trying to keep my composure. "I am the most obvious demon that anyone can pick out in a crowd. Then despite that, I am not a true demon. You and I both know I used to be human. Yet I still don't know how you gained that knowledge. I can't erase it from your memory. Regardless, I should never have stayed in this alleyway with you or listened to your shenanigans. Thank you for mending my clothes and everything, but I think we are done here." After my brief confession, I turned myself away from the old man to walk towards the end of the alleyway.
"I know you don't believe me just as much as you don't believe in yourself. However, I do have 2 more things to give you before you turn away forever,"
he said, interrupting my exit. I hesitated for a moment, debating if I wanted to receive whatever he had for me. Yet as I knew the old man wasn't a threat, I turned back to him without saying a word and crossed my arms. From that point, he began to move his left arm into his pocket and pulled something out. It must have been extremely small, for my eyes couldn't see what it was. His hand must have surrounded it. So as I patiently waited, he held his arm out in front of himself and opened his hand to reveal a ring sitting on his palm. While I stared at it, I recognized its black metallic edges, while the middle was a dark wooden texture. It was my wedding ring that symbolized my relationship status. That very ring that bound me and my wife together in matrimony. That was taken away from me long ago after I became a demon. Ever since I woke up within hell, there was no trace of it. As my eyes were fixed upon it, I noticed the wood texture didn't keep its original whiskey barrel color. It instead had a dark red tint that made the lines forming the wooden rings appear darker. While I was dismayed as to how this man had it, he read my reaction and spoke a final time.
"I know you are perplexed, but I also know how important this ring is to you. Please take it and wear it with pride. Your wife meant everything to you, and you should be able to show it. Of course, I have used magic to have it adjusted to your ring size. No matter what happens to your hands, it will always fit.
Before I could even take a step, he levitated the ring to me and placed it within my hand. I was completely shocked to have my wedding ring in my hand again, so amazed that I twirled it around my fingers to ensure that it was real. Eventually, after I settled my mind, I lifted my head up to the man again. "What is your second thing you want to give me?" I asked, trying not to show my true emotions. With a brief smile on his face, he placed his hands together, gradually pulling them apart. Upon doing so, he managed to generate some sort of small notebook. I looked at it with surprise, as I have never seen anything like this happen. Yet I kept quiet as to fully examine the appearance of the object. Once the glow of his power dimmed again, I saw the cover of the notebook was a hard cover and had tan leather wrinkles within the design. Not only that, but a symbol of a slithering snake was placed in the center towards the top. It was a unique style to say the least, but I couldn't examine it any further before he explained some more.
This is a blank notebook designated for you specifically. It will allow you to keep track of those mysterious powers you have. Learn and grow along with them to gain the knowledge you want. Keep track of them and do as you please with the notebook. I hope it will serve you well, and I hope you will use it wisely. For now, though, I will have it teleported to your house so no one grows suspicious.
After his remark, he snapped his fingers and the notebook disappeared without a trace.
Good luck on your ongoing adventure. The times will be changing soon. Keep your head high, strengthen yourself, and believe.
Believe what? What am I supposed to believe?
Yourself.
And upon his final word, he abruptly vanished and left me alone in the alleyway. Realizing he was gone, I felt foolish for not thanking him. Somehow he helped me with my clothes, managed to return my ring, and gave me a blank notebook for me to use. Despite his foolish speech, I still felt a little grateful that he was on my side and saw I wasn't like Satan. So to honor his assistance and show my devotion to my wife, I began to place my wedding ring upon my left hand. As it met my finger, the size began to enlarge and slide into place to rest at the base. After it was secured, I smiled as I felt somewhat whole again, knowing I had something more to remember my wife by. So upon that, I exited the alleyway lost in thought. How in the world did he get my wedding ring? Did Satan take it from me and pawn it off to someone else? Did he somehow steal it from somewhere? Yet, what was more concerning was that he knew that ring belonged to me. I have not told this man my life story, and he somehow knew the important details of it. How could he possibly know so much about me with only interacting with me twice? All of those questions circled in my head as I stood in place on the sidewalk. My brain was just a jumble of ideas and turbulence. This one conversation made me question why this man was pushing me to fulfill this prophecy. His words contradicted my personality and characteristics. I was alive, and I was the oddball out. All he's doing is making a fool of himself and accusing the wrong person to make this foretold future come true. All he was going to do was get someone killed for his false accusations.
Darius Stone.
I heard a random voice say behind me. I jumped a bit in shock as I wasn't expecting anyone. Yet when I turned to see the person calling me, my eyes took in the sight of Brutus. He wore his usual silver button-down shirt and black pants like he did every day, only this time he had a clipboard resting in his arms and pressed it against his chest. I assumed he did that so no one could see the schedule or special documents he has used to help Satan, but I could care less about it. Regardless of that, he bore a serious expression as his eyes were squinted at me.
You was summoned to the palace. Didn't the servant fetch you?
Yes, he did. But he bolted somewhere into the crowd and I lost him. I figured it would be better to show up with one of his servants or someone equivalent so I wouldn't get into trouble. I said, lying about the interaction I just had with the old man. Brutus didn't find that judicious and spoke out about it immediately.
You should know better than anyone at this point that when Satan calls you to his office, you need to present yourself within a timely fashion. It doesn't matter if you lost the servant or not. You know where the destination is.
Despite his slight diatribe, he let out a sigh and pinched his nose briefly.
Regardless, if that's what you want, I will take you to him. Come along now.
Upon his ushering, I stepped alongside the assistant and walked to make my wanted appearance in Satan's office. Upon my arrival, Satan was sitting in his desk chair and was reading the newspaper again, just like when I was the dealmaker and I would appear to start my job. He held it open to the local tragedies page while his hands covered the new arrival's front cover. He wasn't laughing, which somewhat relieved and worried me. If he wasn't laughing at the local tragedies, I knew he wasn't in a pleasant mood. It was already difficult to deal with him when he was in a good mood. But something was physically agitating him, and I could sense it. Although the air was filled with uneasiness, as we fully stepped into the room, Satan placed the newspaper down and stared at Brutus.
What took you so long?
I am sorry, sir.
He said remorsefully.
I had to walk on foot considering I don't have any flight abilities. The city is extremely big to scan by walking. Regardless, I found him for you. Would you like me to leave?
Yes, that'll do for now. Thank you, Brutus.
After that confirmation, Satan's assistant nodded his head and walked out, shutting the door behind him. Now, it was just me and my enemy enclosed within a confined space.
Wait, I thought you told me that you weren't dealing with Satan while you were down there.
Abby said, interrupting this part of my storytelling. You asked me if Satan was being a dickhead. I said no because I had not met with him at that point you asked your question. But the conversation I had with him today was far from horrifying or torturous.
What? You're telling me that you actually had a decent conversation with him?
Well, I guess you can say that. Continuing on with my interaction with Satan, we stared at each other for a brief moment as the silence filled the room for a minute or two. However, the devil shattered it by speaking first.
So, do you have an explanation as to why you were late to my office?
Because the last time we had a meeting in here, it didn't go as you expected. You kicked me out in fear of burning your office down. I said, annoyed, knowing his office was fireproof. I was actually somewhat being honest with him, even though it wasn't the whole truth. I could still remember back to the day I gained my unknown fire ability while standing in this very room. It happened on the night he forced Abby's demon body to be created and identify itself rather than letting time determine it. My spiraling emotions of anger and defense consumed my body as I had to deal with his aftermath following the incident. My brain could conjure up the memory in extreme detail and take note of her face of melancholy combined with her anxiety. Yet because of that scenario, I forced myself into his office that night and tried demanding the notorious overlord. Despite my actions, Satan ignored my requests and provoked my anger like he always did, which ultimately led the angry fire within me to release.
That's not my fault. You're the one who can't control your power. I'm not the one with the flaws. You are.
That is a bold-faced lie. You have so many flaws that not even a scroll could hold them all within writing.
But do they, though? Or is that just your aggravation toward me influencing your thoughts?
Yes, they do. You are the worst being on Earth. My thoughts are perfectly clear. You already torture your citizens with famine and crime, yet that still isn't good enough for you. That isn't enough suffering or strife that you can feel satisfied. You find that adversity outright within the weird obsession you have with me since day one of my job transfer. It was already bad enough that you imprisoned me within this realm, but an innocent child shouldn't be punished for our past and current history.
She is not a child. She is 20 years of age. If you're old enough to fuck, you're old enough to be an adult.
You are so sickening, I exclaimed. I don't care how old she is. That doesn't make it right. You are so many millennia older than her, and she did nothing to you. Yet because of the partnership she was forced into and the bond she has with me, you automatically tie her into my torment and misery. You are throwing her into a battle that isn't even hers to fight. She's a human, and you're risking her life just to tame your atrocious emotions towards me.
Then maybe you should have taken my offer more seriously when I gave you the chance to take her body. She could have been in this situation rather than you. Just remember that.
I would never wish that upon anyone, especially Abby. No one deserves this kind of treatment or punishment. Along with that, based on all the comments and actions you prevailed to her, I know you have sexual intentions when it comes to her. You would make her your bride if you had the chance, but she needs to be dead in order to do so. I know you better than that, you twisted prick. Upon my statement, the room fell silent and my brain wandered off. My body was full of aggravation and defensiveness as I predicted Satan's plans. All he has ever done was talk sexually about Abby. I could put two and two together. Yet just the raw idea of him making her his bride fueled my emotions. Once again, my chest started to warm up with that hot sensation of fire, and I knew I had to stop myself or walk away. Upon liking my second option more than my first, I started to turn myself around and head for the door before Satan called out to me.
And just what do you think you're doing?
Leaving before something bad happens to either me or you. With that statement, I grabbed the door handle to open the door, but it didn't budge. The handle turned fully, and there wasn't a lock visible to show it was locked. So as I struggled to pull the door open, Satan chuckled and spoke again.
You really think I would make it that easy for you to just leave? I'm not done talking to you yet.
Then out of nowhere, he snapped his fingers and I was rushed back to my original spot to stand. I tried to step away and maneuver myself again, yet my feet were once more glued to the spot, unable to move. Upon that action, I gazed at Satan furiously while he smirked from the corner of his mouth.
Straighten yourself so we can talk like true gentlemen.
I didn't obey his orders and kept still like a statue. This was far from being a normal talk like gentlemen. There was no such thing when it came to talking to him. So why put in the effort if he wasn't going to reciprocate it back?
Fine. I will make it so that you do.
Within that moment, he brought both of his hands up and twisted them while my arms randomly bent and curled behind my back. There was a slight rush of pain from the initial action that made me take a sharp intake of breath and clench my teeth together. However, it flowed away quickly, as if he let off the power. So trying to place my arms back by my sides, I found them resisting me again. I couldn't feel the restraint of the cuffs pulling on my wrists. I actually felt them resting as if they were normal bracelets. Yet I was still clueless as to why. Regardless of that fact, I knew I had to play along again with my body charade. As I stared at my creator, he was standing behind his desk and had placed himself in front of the window. He eventually rotated himself to it as the orange sky's brightness was fading and turning his realm into a black abyss. The street lamps were starting to lighten as the businesses and shop signs started to illuminate the city. It was somewhat peaceful to look at for some reason. It somehow managed to tame my fiery hotness that had developed from earlier. I knew he was watching this transition to make me wait, He especially knew I wanted to leave. Yet he still had me linger to hear what he had to say. Once he was done gazing out upon his kingdom, he turned back to me and sighed.
Ever since we made that deal, there has been nothing but hostility between us. It's been more than that to you, and I can see it now. Hell, you feel like I have an obsession with you. That should say everything.
As those words came out of his mouth, I stood dismayed and apprehensive. There was no way any of this was true. We literally just bickered with each other and didn't show an ounce of compassion. Why now was he suddenly changing his attitude? We both despised each other, and there was nothing that could change that.
I know you are also standing there in disbelief of what I'm doing, and that's okay. I would too if I were in your position.
What's your angle here? What do you want? I asked accusingly.
I'm not asking for your forgiveness if that's what you're implying,
He quickly stated.
All I am asking is to stop with this bickering back and forth. It is exhausting and needs to stop.
Well, this isn't just a one-way street, I scolded. If you want things to change, you have to put in the effort also. You can't place everything on me and expect it to adjust. His whole body clenched for a moment, yet he let out another frustrated sigh.
I know. It will take some getting used to, but I'm tired of this. Can we agree to that?
As that statement flowed into my ears, the words didn't settle down easily. Something fishy was happening here. He never wanted to reconcile with me before, and there was no way his brain wanted to change. Yes, the constant tension between us was tiring, but it was something we have dealt with for years. I would never forgive him for what he did to me, no matter if he wanted to be my friend or not. Yet as my mind kept tossing everything around, I remembered some crucial things Abby taught me that I could utilize within this moment. I could use the acting skills to portray someone I'm not. I could act like Satan and play him at his own game, make him think I have fallen for his tricks, and backstab him in the end. So pretending to be defeated, I set the plan in motion. Okay, I'll agree, I said regrettably. Once the compliance was made, he waved his hands again and my arms fell to my sides. I instantly started straightening my shirt and steadying my breathing as he placed his arms behind his back.
Come, walk with me.
The door soon opened again as he commanded it to, and he came out behind his desk to head to the opening. I hesitated for a moment, but ultimately made my way to his side to follow in his direction. Next to his side, we walked in silence for a bit as the servants and higher-ups roamed the different levels of the castle. My eyes drifted down to the different floors and saw all the people looking up at us. I grew nervous as to why, but yet I had to remember who was next to me. Satan always had eyes on him. He was the center of attention and people ensured to stay out of his way. I even saw Brutus on the 4th level staring with a smile on his face. Upon seeing that, though, I immediately turned my head away and recalled myself to refocus on my task. The destination I was brought to was his throne room. His satanic chair stood tall with all kinds of spikes and pentagrams surrounding it. It was elevated using 5 steps, and it was the only thing that sat on the top. The rest of the room was full of armor and weapons. A carpet led to the bottom of the stair where his prisoner/victim would beg for his mercy. We stepped to that exact spot, and he paused as we faced his throne.
It really is something, isn't it?
He asked. Yeah, something would be the word for it, I replied.
I wouldn't expect you to understand the joy or importance of this chair. But this is where the real judge-making begins.
He then walked up the stairs and circled his throne to brush his fingers upon it.
I can still picture the day I picked you as my dealmaker. I was sitting in this very chair while I held your file in my hand.
I wanted to refute against him and vocalize my anger as he was telling his side of things. But I knew I had to keep myself composed. So I clenched my fists tight behind my back as he sat himself down and continued on.
I could see your personality and how determined you were to help your son. You were a person who would stop at nothing to destroy that tumor. You were also determined to fight for the things you love.
Yes, I was. And I still am. I said, ensuring him that I haven't changed that part of myself.
Oh, I know. I can see that with your precious little protector child. And for some reason, she reflects the same kind of personality you have. No wonder you two get along so well. But I do want to warn you about something.
And what is that, Satan? Upon my question, he leaned forward in his chair and gripped the arms of it.
Be weary of the kind of path you're making. The current one you're on will only get you in trouble and lead to a life of worse torment. You are already living in it because of what I have done to you. You will always blame me for your suffering, and I fully understand that. But believe me when I tell you this, that human of yours will only make you suffer more. Your current future isn't one you want to live with.
What the hell did he mean by that? My current future had me protecting Abby and fighting off all her troubles. I couldn't see any threat to this. How was this going to get me in trouble? Yet I didn't reflect upon it long, as I knew I had to answer him. I'll consider that advice. Thank you, sir. Satan smiled at that moment and relaxed in his chair after my comment. Yet I still needed to leave to go find Abby again. I haven't seen her all afternoon, and it was probably the middle of the night in hell. I probably missed her entire Thanksgiving event and needed to get back. Is that all you wanted?
Yes. Thank you for the delightful conversation. I'm looking forward to more of these. You're dismissed.
My head nodded to respect his wishes, and I brought my arm up to double tap my protector marking with the snake and rose. I knew I could teleport to wherever she was if I tapped upon it. This was also the better way to exit rather than using my wings. So as I touched the marking, I vanished from the room and abruptly landed in the passenger seat of Abby's car. That's what happened, and I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I just didn't want you freaking out more while you were around people. Plus, I'm used to this bullshit by now. I can handle it myself.
Darius, that's not the point.
She stated.
If you expect me to be honest and truthful about what's happening with me, you have to do the same also.
But did you seriously want to sit at a family gathering you were nervous about to begin with and worry about a grown-ass demon? I was still honest and told you after the fact.
I would have liked to be informed on your situation than being left in the dark. I still worried about you regardless. You are my grown-ass demon. There is a difference.
After that response, I chuckled for a moment. It sounded humorous that she called me her demon. I knew that was something she never thought she would ever say in her life. So once I composed myself, I thanked her. Well, thank you for the compliment. It's touching to know you care so much about a dead man.
Well, you're not like the other ones. You at least have a caring heart still living inside of you, unlike the rest of them. Quite literally, even though it doesn't beat all the time. But besides the point, I'm sorry that you had a stressful day.
It's okay, Abby. I've been through a lot worse. Especially when it comes to the interactions with Satan.
I mean, you're not wrong. What happened between him and you today seems really odd. You don't seriously think he's going to...
Of course not. I quickly interrupted, knowing what she was asking. I firmly believe he isn't trying to change. He's trying to deceive me. If nothing has changed between us within the past 13 years, it isn't going to change now.
Well, what happens if that kind of behavior is displayed again from him? What if he keeps up the charade?
Then I will too. It takes 2 opponents to begin a game, but only one can be the winner. It's all about strategizing and laying your cards right. In this scenario, it's just like you've taught me. I need to pretend to be someone that I'm not. If I don't, I'll lose, and consequences will be granted.
But what does that mean when it comes to him intruding within our lives? What happens if he commences another torture session like he did the night you obtained the wrist cuffs?
I will fight for you, I said, pausing for a moment. I will not let him hurt you ever again. I'd be damned if he grew violent and caused you pain another time. I'm your protector demon, and I will ensure that you are safe from everything and everyone, even if that means defying one of the most powerful beings known to man. I turned my head to Abby to see she kept her eyes on the road as she expressed a blank face. I actually couldn't tell if she was stunned by my words or if she really didn't care. Yet I never asked to understand how she felt. We were just silent all the way home. As a matter of fact, we were silent the rest of the night. The last thing she told me was good night when she went to bed. So as I sat in her computer chair, I reflected until my body grew tired. Once that feeling came, I teleported down to hell to get some shut-eye and sleep.
This has been Chapter 9, A Day of Duplicity, from the book The Forbidden Truth. Tune in to the next video for Chapter 10. Thank you for listening.